I told you she doesn't fit in. The discharge paper sat on the command desk. Eliza was waiting for orders to leave the base. Then, right when the training scenario was interrupted, an enemy voice suddenly crackled over the radio. Is she still alive? The one who shot me last year? The entire command room fell silent, the lieutenant whispered. Is he talking about Sergeant Tran, forward operating base, Echo 9, a tense border region? Eliza Tran, 31 years old, was a strategic marksman, but for 3 months straight, she barely spoke. No small talk, no participation in team activities, no joining the evening card games. Her performance reviews stated exceptional marksmanship skills, but psychologically inflexible, not suitable for collaborative combat operations. The recommendation sent her home under psychological discharge protocols. She didn't argue, didn't protest, didn't even ask for a second opinion every morning. She still attended training drills punctually, still cleaned her rifle meticulously, still completed equipment checks without complaint. Some teammates called her the mute scout or the emotionless ghost during team formation exercises. Eliza was always the one left over, the odd one out, the person nobody wanted on their squad. She'd stand there quietly while others paired up her face, showing no reaction to being repeatedly overlooked. The administrative officer pulled her aside privately one afternoon. We're about to process your paperwork. It's not because you're incompetent, it's because the team doesn't accept you. Eliza simply nodded. I understand, sir. Her bunkmates whispered about her at night, how she never laughed at jokes, how she ate meals alone, how she seemed to exist in a bubble of silence that nobody could penetrate. What they didn't know was that Eliza heard everything, every whispered comment, every joke made at her expense, every time they questioned why she was even there. She absorbed it all without reaction, filing it away like intelligence data. The base psychiatrist had recommended her for evaluation twice. Both times, she passed the standard test with flying colors, mentally stable, no signs of PTSD, no behavioral red flags. But something was different about her. Something that made seasoned soldiers uncomfortable. Maybe it was how she could sit perfectly still for hours during observation training. Maybe it was how her eyes seemed to catalog every detail of a room the moment she entered. Maybe it was how she never seemed surprised by anything. Whatever it was, it made her an outsider in a place where brotherhood meant survival. CTA comment. Act 1, have you ever seen good people treated badly? Type so unfair. Her second to last day at the base, the outpost received UAV interference reports. Signs of an incoming attack from the Western Sector Alpha team was on patrol, but they lacked long-range sniper support due to manpower shortage. Eliza was temporarily recalled assigned to the Western Hill position with her M110 rifle. She climbed to her position without fanfare. No goodbyes, no good luck wishes, just another day's work before her discharge. As she settled into her overwatch position, the communication system picked up an unexpected transmission from enemy territory. A clear male voice spoke in accented English. Is she still alive? Static crackled across the radio. Small frame, black hair. The one who shot me last year. I still have the scar on my face. The command center went dead silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. If she's there, I won't advance. My men won't advance. We'll wait. The first person to recognize the implications was Lieutenant Morrison. Wait, was she at Shadowline last year's Syria operation? A corporal whispered urgently. She took out someone's eye and never bragged about it. Not even once. Another voice joined in. How did we not know about this? The enemy transmission continued. Tell me she's gone home. Tell me she's not behind that scope. Eliza didn't turn around to face the shocked stares burning into her back. She simply loaded around into the chamber, adjusted her scope settings, and spoke calmly into her radio. Still here, the enemy frequency went quiet for 30 seconds. Then, barely audible, shit back in the command center pieces were falling into place. The classified operation files, the missing months in her service record, the psychological evaluations that made no sense for someone with combat experience. Lieutenant Morrison frantically pulled up classified databases on his terminal. Jesus Christ Operation Shadowline was Black Ops deep reconnaissance, single operator missions behind enemy lines. The intelligence officer leaned over his shoulder. If she was there. Why isn't it in her standard file? Because those records are compartmentalized. We wouldn't have clearance to see them on the radio. They could hear enemy chatter, increasing multiple voices now speaking in a language their translators couldn't identify quickly enough, but one phrase kept repeating, coordinates, grid references, retreat vectors. They were pulling back an entire assault force. Pulling back because one sniper was in position. The base commander, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stepped forward and picked up the radio handset. Sergeant Tran. This is Colonel Hayes. How copy loud and clear, Sir Sergeant. Who exactly? Are you a pause wind whistling across the radio transmission? Just someone who pays attention, sir. The CTA comment Act 2. If you've ever misjudged someone, badly type. I was wrong. The enemy voice was identified through signal intelligence call sign Crane, a legendary sniper responsible for eliminating 6 NATO personnel. No one had ever successfully neutralized him until last year in a deep reconnaissance mission that officially never happened. Eliza had engaged Crane at one point 4 kilometers a shot that took his left eye and sent him into hiding for months. But because the operation was classified beyond standard military clearance levels, her record had been scrubbed from conventional systems. Now Crane was refusing to advance his entire assault force unless he knew for certain that Eliza was gone. The command staff faced an impossible choice. Keep her and admit they'd almost discharged their most valuable asset, or lie and say she'd already been sent home. They didn't need to decide Eliza had just taken the shot through her scope. She'd identified movement in a concealed position 1,600 meters out a glint of metal. The subtle shift of camouflage fabric, one shot perfectly placed, the target disappeared from thermal imaging. Radio chatter from enemy positions erupted into chaos, then gradually faded to silence. Wind swept across the hilltop. Everyone in the command center stared at their screens. Lieutenant Morrison whispered into his headset. Target. Neutralized. Eliza's voice came back calm and professional. Threat. Eliminated. Enemy forces withdrawing to secondary positions. The base commander set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. In 30 years of military service, he'd never seen anything like this. One soldier, one shot, an entire battle. Avoided. The administrative clerk who'd been processing Eliza's discharge papers slowly picked up the documents and tore them cleanly in half. But the story wasn't over as enemy communications went dark. The intelligence team intercepted one final transmission, a voice speaking in broken English. The ghost is real. The stories were true. What stories? The translator asked. Colonel Hayes walked over to the classified terminal and input his highest security clearance codes. Files began appearing on screen. Mission reports that had been buried in Black Project databases. Operation Shadowline, Operation Silent Thunder, Operation Nightfall, all featuring the same operative, all successful, all classified beyond normal military knowledge. 12 confirmed eliminations, 0 friendly casualties, 0 mission failures. But what stood out wasn't the numbers. It was the method. Every mission report described the same pattern: minimal communication, perfect execution, immediate extraction, no glory-seeking, no credit-claiming, no bragging rights, a professional who did the job and disappeared back into anonymity. The psychological profile made sense. Now someone trained for deep cover operations would naturally seem disconnected in regular military social situations. Someone used to working alone for months would struggle with team bonding exercises. They hadn't been looking at a misfit of soldier. They'd been looking at their most lethal operative, and they'd almost thrown her away because she didn't fit their idea of what a hero should look like. The intelligence officer shook his head in disbelief. We were going to discharge someone who single-handedly prevented more casualties than entire battalions. Colonel Hayes picked up the radio one more time. Sergeant Tran returned to base when ready, and Sergeant, yes, sir. Welcome to your new permanent assignment. CTA comment. Act 3, if you've ever been helped by someone you never got to thank. Right? I owe them. Eliza returned to base without fanfare. She cleaned her rifle, secured it in the armory, and walked quietly across the compound that evening. A young private knocked on her door and handed her a small package. Inside was a handwritten note. "You don't need anyone's recognition. Even your enemies fear you from the next day forward." Nobody called her antisocial anymore. Instead, people began asking different questions. How do you stay so calm under pressure? What's it like to shoot when no one else dares to take the shot? Can you teach me to be that focused? But Eliza remained the same, quiet, professional, humble. She didn't tell war stories in the mess hall. She didn't display her commendations. She didn't seek attention or praise. She simply continued doing what she'd always done, her job. The difference was that now, when team assignments were made, squad leaders fought to have her on their roster when training exercises were conducted. Everyone paid attention to how she moved, how she positioned herself, how she read terrain. When new recruits arrived, they were told about the quiet sergeant who once stopped an entire enemy assault with a single shot. But if you asked Eliza about it, she'd just shrug and change the subject because true professionals don't need applause. They don't need recognition. They don't need credit. They just need the opportunity to serve. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't the medals or the praise. It's the moment when your worst enemy admits they're afraid of you. The base never faced another serious assault. Word had spread through enemy networks about the ghost sniper at Echo 9. Some legends are born from boasting and bravado. Others are born from silence and skill. Eliza Tran had become something rarer than a decorated hero. She'd become a deterrent. CTA Comment Act 4 type. I'll live with honor if you believe every good person deserves to be remembered forever. Some people don't need anyone to defend them because even their enemies won't dare underestimate them. Eliza Tran was that example. She didn't talk about enemy scars. She didn't boast about achievements. She simply did the right thing quietly and waited for the right moment to prove her worth. The world sometimes rushes to cross your name off the list, but there are names that live forever because they make even opponents think twice. Real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need validation. Real strength just is. And when the moment comes when everything is on the line, that quiet strength speaks louder than any words ever could. The most dangerous people are often the quietest ones, the ones who seem invisible until the world needs them most. Remember that the next time you meet someone who doesn't fit the mold, they might just be the one person standing between you and disaster, and you'll never know it until it matters most.